On the 9th of June 1982, 96 Israeli aircraft dominate the skies over the Bekaa Valley on Lebanon's border with Syria. With Israeli Phantoms striking Syrian surface-to-air missile sites, some 100 Syrian fighters are racing towards them from the east, intent on delivering a debilitating blow. Aboard these fighters, their pilots are blissfully unaware of the aerial battle they are soon to be engulfed by, the largest since the Korean War. To their flanks, Israeli F-15s, named by the Israeli Air Force as the Bads, and F-16s, named the Nets, are hastily positioning themselves to deliver a crushing strike against them. As the distance between the two forces closes, the Israelis release their Sparrow air-to-air missiles, which streak towards their unsuspecting Syrian foes. This operation, Operation Mole Cricket 19, takes its inspiration from two similar operations executed almost a decade prior, during the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The first of these, Operation Model 5, was conducted over the Golan Heights, with the objective of eliminating Syria's forward-deployed surface-to-air missile batteries, whilst to the west, Operation Tagar sought to cripple those of Egypt. Although Tagar was cancelled, Model 5 progressed. Thanks to poor intelligence, Israel would suffer significant losses. Some 6 F-4 Phantoms, named by the Israelis the Kornats, with a further 6 damaged, for negligible gains. A further demonstration of Israel's ignorance towards the newly acquired Soviet surface-to-air missile batteries was demonstrated during the opening days of the Yom Kippur War. As the Egyptian forces breached the Bar-Lev line and advanced into the Sinai Desert, the Israeli Air Force launched several waves of strike aircraft in an attempt to provide air support to its ground forces. Providing cover to Egypt's spearheads was a newly acquired, well-trained and sophisticated air defense array, which managed to destroy 40 Israeli aircraft, some 14% of its frontline strength. By comparison, only 5 aircraft would be lost as a result of air-to-air combat. In 1981, the very real possibility of another direct confrontation grew. When Israeli nets shot down 2 Syrian helicopters over Lebanon, Syria deployed the first of several surface-to-air missile brigades to the Bekaa Valley, including 3 SA-6 systems. The presence of these systems was seen by Israel as a violation of the tacit agreement between Israel and Syria regarding the presence of their military forces in Lebanon. And so, for the following year, Israeli aircraft conducted extensive aerial reconnaissance over the Bekaa Valley, while strike aircraft practiced mock strike runs over the Negev desert. Meanwhile, Israel's Minister of Defense and the Defense Forces Chief of Staff developed plans for an invasion of Lebanon, aiming to take out the Palestinian Liberation Organization, who were routinely conducting operations against Israel. On the 6th of June 1982, Operation Peace for Galilee began, as 6 Israeli divisions crossed into Lebanon along 3 spearheads. On day 3 of the operation, Israeli and Syrian units advanced into the town of Jezin. In the ensuing action, 5 Israeli tanks would be destroyed. In response to this engagement, Syria moves 5 batteries of SA-6 systems into Lebanon. Together with those already stationed in Lebanon, the number of batteries reaches 19. Key to understanding Syria's motives is that these 5 additional systems are dispatched from the Golan Heights, and are indicative of Syria's intention not to fight a war with Israel. Israeli Minister of Defense Ariel Sharon receives news of the engagement and uses it to stoke up support for a retaliatory strike against SAM batteries in the area, so that Israeli air forces will be able to support the ground forces. In Tel Aviv, Sharon attends a heated cabinet meeting where he proposes Operation Mole Cricket 19. Chief of Staff Raphael Eitan shares his reservations, saying, "We could easily get our 40 kilometers quietly, without striking the missiles, without a full-scale war, finish off the PLO and go home." Dismissing these concerns, Sharon proclaims that to deny Israeli ground forces of much-needed air support would be criminal. After lengthy debate between political and military officials, Prime Minister Menachem Begin is won over by the deputy commander of the Israeli Air Force, reassured that losses would be minimal. Sharon retires and orders the operation ahead. It now falls to Commander of the Air Force, Aluf David Ivri, to set the plan in motion. Ivri is charged with showing that the Israeli Air Force can stand up to the newest and most sophisticated missile systems its enemies can field. restoring the Air Force's aura of invincibility that it had so embarrassingly lost in 1973. On the 9th of June, the Israeli Air Force is conducting operations in Lebanese airspace, with several Kafir and Skyhawk squadrons tasked with providing close air support to advancing Israeli columns along the Lebanese coastline. Operating nearby over the Mediterranean Sea, Ra'em electronic countermeasure aircraft and E-2C Hawkeye, named Daya AWACS aircraft, are working in conjunction with both squadrons already operating in Lebanon, and a small number of Mastiff and Scout drones, also known as remotely piloted vehicles, shortened to RPVs. These are currently conducting reconnaissance missions over the Bekaa Valley and Syria's 3 main air bases. At 1:30 p.m, 10 Israeli Air Force squadrons depart from their air bases across the country. Of these squadrons, 6 fly with the state-of-the-art F-16 Fighting Falcon, or NETs, and the F-15 Eagle, or BAZ, strike fighters. Joining these are 4 squadrons of F-4 Phantoms, or Kornas, strike aircraft. Across Israel, a force comprising of 96 F-15s, F-16s and F-4s begins to form up into its respective formations. The BAZ and NET squadrons climb in preparation to provide top cover to their Kornas counterparts, flying at a lower altitude for their suppression and destruction of enemy air defense missions. Meanwhile, RPVs continue to provide live positioning data on Syria's anti-aircraft missile batteries, which is continuously fed directly to Air Force Command, as well as the individual squadrons soon to be taking part in the operation. Courtesy of the radar signature of the RPVs, Syrian radar operators ignite their target acquisition radars and reveal not only their precise locations, but the exact frequencies used to detect incoming aircraft. With this, they are now vulnerable and jammable. This information is sent on to the BAZ aircraft, specifically outfitted for this operation with electronic countermeasure jamming pods. Once more, this information is dispersed back to Air Force Command in Tel Aviv, which is enjoying a live 2-way information stream, as well as communication with its pilots. With information and communications able to be passed on with such ease, both commanders and pilots are able to provide real-time updates. With Syrian missile batteries now active and their accompanying target acquisition radars alighted, they actively begin to track and lock on to the Israeli RPVs loitering overhead. As soon as the Syrian batteries fire, the launch is detected by the drone, which feeds this onto the AWACS platforms that vectors the Kornases onto the missile battery that has just fired. As the Kornases approach the Syrian missile batteries, Israeli artillery emplacements in Hasbaya and Kukabar begin to shell the missile batteries in advance of the aircraft. This aims to stun their operators. In sequential order, the Kornases begin their blistering runs towards the missile batteries. Racing to close range with the Syrian emplacements, as soon as they're within range, they launch their missiles and bank to flee should the Syrians have the chance to fire back. Equipped with both AGM-78 Standard and AGM-45 Shrike anti-radiation missiles, the Kornases are perfectly equipped for the tasking. Just as intended, the Kornases enter within range and launch their missiles, one after the other, across the Bekaa Valley. The missiles race onto the Syrian batteries, who are blissfully unaware of any Israeli aircraft beyond the drones harassing them. As the Kornases' missiles begin to strike the Syrian air defences, a number of nets look to take advantage of the chaos and confusion below. Equipped with a conventional ordnance payload, several nets dive down to lower altitude and single out several mobile SAM batteries. These mobile SA-8 and SA-9 systems may be mobile, allowing them to avoid the perils of a static emplacement, but in moving they not only present themselves as a target, but a target that cannot return fire. Targeting several of these mobile SAMs, one net scores hits with his ordnance. As Kornas after Kornas strike Syrian missile batteries along the edge of the Bekaa Valley, the Syrian Air Force Command soon realizes what is happening. Not only have they been caught off guard, but their slow response is looking to be costly. Immediately, Syrian Air Force commanders issue orders for their aircraft already aloft on combat air patrols to withdraw from Lebanon and western Syria back to their air bases out of fears they may be next in line to be targeted. As the Qornasses conduct their runs up and down the valley, Syrian batteries return heavy missile fire. Some 57 missiles are launched against the Israeli strike aircraft, yet one after another fails to meet its target. With their target acquisition radars either jammed, damaged, or completely destroyed, the missile simply cannot track its target. The missiles also struggle to reach the low-flying, withdrawing Qornasses as they dart back to safety after launching their Standards and Shrikes. One by one, Syrian batteries continue to fall. With those Syrian fighters previously on operations having landed, rearmed, and refueled, the order to take to the skies to fight the Israelis finally comes. Over 100 Syrian MiG-21 and MiG-23 fighters scramble from 3 Syrian airbases. As this huge force rises into the sky over western Syria, it forms up into a number of flight-sized elements. The mixed force of Syrian MiGs turns towards Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley, readying itself for a fight with the Israeli Air Force. Unbeknownst to the Syrians, however, is that the same Israeli RPVs that have been monitoring and harassing Syrian missile batteries across the Bekaa Valley have also been continuously monitoring the Syrian Air Force's primary air bases, relaying any and all activity to the Israeli AWACS, who are awaiting the signal that the Syrians have scrambled. Just as the first Syrian fighters were spotted climbing into the sky, the Israelis acted immediately. The information is passed on to the Baz and Netz fighter squadrons flying top cover over the Qornasses below. With all aware of the incoming Syrian threat, Israeli Air Force Command issues its orders. The loitering top cover squadrons are to prepare themselves to surprise and engage the approaching Syrians. As the Syrian formations approach Lebanese airspace and the Bekaa Valley, Israeli AWACS begins to vector Baz and Netz squadrons into position to ambush them, making sure to keep a wide berth, to keep the element of surprise before they will attack the Syrian aircraft from their flanks, outside of their radar detection cones, which are looking to their front. The Israeli Air Force Re'em electronic countermeasure aircraft is successfully able to jam and disrupt communications between the approaching Syrian formations and their ground intercept controllers. The Syrians are blind, now perfectly vulnerable to a surprise attack. For the Syrians, their flight out is filled with trepidation and fear. They're all too familiar with Israel's new fighters and just how superior they are. Only when, completely out of the blue and from a foe they had no idea were there, missiles begin exploding amongst the formation, do the Syrian pilots realize how truly desperate their situation is. Aircraft begin to explode, and their flaming wreckage descends to the ground. The MiG's threat warning systems have completely failed to detect the incoming Israeli fighters or their missiles. Taking advantage of the MiG's threat warning systems being in the nose and tail, providing no warning of incoming missiles to their flanks, Israeli fighters have begun the engagement before the Syrians even knew their existence. Far beyond the visual range of the Syrian pilots and undetected by their radars, Israeli Baz fighters continue to launch their Sparrow air-to-air missiles with deadly precision. Reaching a speed in excess of Mach 3.5 at a distance of over 25 miles, the Syrians are successfully blindsided. With AWACS continuously monitoring the incoming Syrian formations, Israeli fighters continue to be meticulously organized to attack from their flanks for maximum lethality. One after another, Syrian formations are harassed and attacked by an enemy they simply cannot see, and the sky over the Bekaa Valley is soon marked by streams of black smoke and falling aircraft. As the distance closes, the Israeli Air Force switches to its capable Sidewinder air-to-air missile for the air-to-air engagements now within visual range. One observer recalls, the Syrian fighters fly in figures of 8, flying around and not knowing what to do next. With Syrian pilots confused and with the Israeli fighters needing to rearm and refuel, the Israeli pilots take this opportunity to withdraw. As they begin to return to base, the outgoing Israeli aircraft are replaced by another force of 92 aircraft, composed of Netz, Baz, and Qornasses. Just as this first wave heads towards the horizon, the second appears out of it. Once again guided by AWACS aircraft, the fighters position to engage the disorganized Syrians. Meanwhile, the Syrian missile batteries in the Bekaa Valley continue to be battered by Qornasses. Still jammed and unable to return any accurate fire, the Syrian batteries can do little in response. Looking to make the most of their vulnerable nature, Even an RPG equipped with conventional munitions attacks 2 batteries. 17 of the 19 Syrian batteries across the Bekaa Valley will be destroyed or rendered inoperable. The Khornasses will finally prepare to withdraw after conducting live battle damage assessments of their targets. Above them, Netz and Baz fighters continue to jostle with Syrian fighters, now well within visual range. The Israeli fighters continue to harass and destroy a disorganized and technologically inferior Syrian opposition. The remaining Syrian fighters begin to withdraw, fleeing east towards their airfields, while eager Israeli fighters pursue them. As light begins to fade, the Israeli fighters are ordered home, declaring the operation a success. Within a matter of hours, 22 Syrian MiGs have been destroyed, and a further 7 damaged without Israeli loss. Through Thursday the 10th and Friday the 11th of June, the Israeli Air Force would continue to use the same tactics, even making use of the ADM-141 Samson radar decoy missile to bait Syrian radar sites into switching on their radars to track them, so that they can then be targeted by the Khornasses. 29 missile batteries will be destroyed. The Syrian Air Force will continue to scramble its remaining fighter aircraft to attempt to intercept the Israeli formations. Most devastatingly to Syria, between 86 and 90 MiG-21 and MiG-23s are destroyed, constituting 25% of the Syrian Air Force's frontline fighter force. Operation Mole Cricket 19 demonstrated that a modern air force could tackle and neutralize a complex air defense network through the application of communication and radar jamming, remotely piloted vehicles, radar tracking, and strike aircraft to suppress and destroy enemy air defenses. While not used in the first day depicted in this video, the later tactic of using the ADM-141 Samson radar decoy missile to provoke Syrian air defense radars into locking onto bait targets so the Khornasses could destroy them, would heavily influence similar tactics used by the United States Air Force and United States Navy over Baghdad during the first day of the air war of Operation Desert Storm in 1991, known as Pubar's Party. Ariel Sharon is quoted as saying that this single-handedly changed the timetable of the war. Syria's Minister of Defense is reported to have told Assad that they were outclassed, their ground-to-air missiles useless, and that the army could not fight on. Ordered to Moscow, he requests a comprehensive Soviet air umbrella for Syria, which they deny. Soviet Air Defense Chief Marshal Pavel Kutikov is dispatched to Syria to make sense of the failings of the Syrian missile batteries, as the Soviet Union fears that if Israel could defeat them in this way, so too could NATO. On the 9th of June 1982, 96 Israeli aircraft dominate the skies over the Bekaa Valley on Lebanon's border with Syria. With Israeli Phantoms striking Syrian surface-to-air missile sites, some 100 Syrian fighters are racing towards them from the east, intent on delivering a debilitating blow. Aboard these fighters, their pilots are blissfully unaware of the aerial battle they are soon to be engulfed by, the largest since the Korean War. To their flanks, Israeli F-15s, named by the Israeli Air Force as the Baz, and F-16s, named the Netz, are hastily positioning themselves to deliver a crushing strike against them. As the distance between the two forces closes, the Israelis release their Sparrow air-to-air missiles, which streak towards their unsuspecting Syrian foes. This operation, Operation Mole Cricket 19, takes its inspiration from 2 similar operations executed almost a decade prior, during the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The first of these, Operation Model 5, was conducted over the Golan Heights, with the objective of eliminating Syria's forward-deployed surface-to-air missile batteries, whilst to the west, Operation Tagar sought to cripple those of Egypt. Although Tagar was cancelled, Model 5 progressed. Thanks to poor intelligence, Israel would suffer significant losses. Some 6 F-4 Phantoms, named by the Israelis the Khornats, with a further 6 damaged, for negligible gains. A further demonstration of Israel's ignorance towards the newly acquired Soviet surface-to-air missile batteries was demonstrated during the opening days of the Yom Kippur War. As the Egyptian forces breached the Bar Lev line and advanced into the Sinai Desert, the Israeli